I'm going to cover the 3A framework of reframing, which is the skill I'm going to teach you, and the 5 rules for using it ethically. So what's reframing? Reframing is the 1 to 3 sentences that you say after a prospect says anything but yes, that increases the likelihood that whatever your next thing you say gets them to buy. So here's how a reframe might sound. Someone might say, hey, how many certifications do your trainers have? Now, this is a trap question because it's basically a blind question where whatever you say in response, the prospect gets to be the judge of whether or not they accept that, and then they choose to buy or not. And you don't know what the right answer is. And so rather than answer the question, you ask a question about the question. And so you'd say something like, well, which certifications are you looking for specifically? The next version of this might be someone says, how many questions I'm going to be able to ask via email in support? Now, whatever number you give, they might say, oh, that's not enough, or that's too many, or whatever it is, and then they say, no, for that reason, I don't want to buy. So instead, you might say, well, why do you want to ask additional questions? How many questions do you want to ask? Is there a purpose that you're trying to solve with this? Like, what are you most afraid of? See, that was like 2 or 3 questions in a row that can reframe without answering the question they gave me. And one of the biggest lessons that I teach in sales is asking the questions is the one who's in control. And so you've ever seen the Hollywood movies where they're like, I'm the one asking the questions here. It's because the person who asks the questions is the one who's in control of the conversation. As soon as they start asking the questions, you're on defense, which is not where you want to be. And the reframing process I'm about to show you has sold things as low as $100 all the way up to $1 million plus service packages. And it's sold them in person, on the phone, via Zoom, from stage, wherever which way you can imagine. This works. So in a second, I'm going to give you the 3 A's framework and 5 rules for using it because this.
So before he jumps into the 3 A's framework, guys, this is a super important point. A lot of times when we get asked questions from prospects, we're seeking to find the right answer, but he's bang on the money here. You don't know what the right answer is to your prospect. So actually you need to find out what is the answer they're looking for behind the question. And you need to understand how important that answer is to them as well. And the only way you can do that is by asking a question. This is almost like a power struggle here. They ask a question, you either respond and hope that you're giving the right answer, or you respond back with a question to find out exactly why they're asking the question and how important the answer is actually to them. Is it, a 10 out of 10 deal breaker, or is it just kind of a 2 or 3 out of 10 just out of curiosity question? But you can't take the risk. And asking a question back, again, keeps the power with yourself. You keep the power dynamic stays the way you need it to.
This is unbelievably powerful, and used the right way, it helps lots of people make good decisions. Used the wrong way, you become a very bad person and give a bad reputation for sales. So the reason I started thinking about this was I was writing and reviewing our closing manual for our closers. And I had this little piece right before all the closes that says, hey, by the way, make sure that you reframe the question before you enter into the close. But the thing is I realized as I was walking through the sales floor the other day, I heard someone just immediately fire back an obstacle overcome, and it seemed very combative. And I was like, they're not getting the reframe part. And I realized that little reframe, little bubble, was one of, if not the most important part of handling sales. And so if you think about what the most productive salespeople do, the people who close the highest percentage of sales, what do? They ask for the sale more times than anyone else. Now here's the problem with that, is that if you ask more times than anyone else the wrong way, you'll get prospects to hate you. And if prospects hate you, they won't buy from you. And so the idea is we want to be able to ask for the sale as many times as possible, which means the way that we ask for the sale or how we frame our ask should not decrease rapport with the customer. And so the idea is we want to continue to maintain rapport the entire time so that we can then ask as many times as we darn well please. So here's the 3A framework that I teach. The first A is acknowledge, all right? This is where you build rapport with the prospect version 1, all right? And the way that we do that is by saying what they said back to us. Now, there's a couple benefits from this. One is when you say it back to them, they think that you're actively listening, which of course you should. But the other part of it is that it buys you time to think about what you're going to say next. And so it gives you a little bit of space to process before you give your overcome or your handling of whatever their objection is. The second piece, and this is part of why this seems more natural with the most professional guys, is that this is the really sexy part. You associate. All right. Now there's 3 associations that I'm going to show you how to do. But what you do is you associate the question they asked with the type of behavior that someone who gets the best results from your product or service would ask. And so basically when they feel like they're taking a step away from buying, you say, that's an amazing question. That's actually a question that a lot of the best customers we have ask. And so actually you just say, nope, that means that you're more likely to buy. The third thing is that after you have made the association, you've acknowledged what they said, you've made the association, then you ask your next question after you've properly reframed what you're going to say next. So let's dive into this. So like a lawyer in an interrogation, they never ask questions they don't already know the answers to. And you as a salesperson want to only ask questions that you know the answers to. And if you are ever going to answer questions, you want to know that you have the right answer before you respond. And so when we do the acknowledgement, let's walk through the example I had earlier. So they say, well, what kind of certifications do your trainers have? And I say, so you're curious about what our certifications are. It's a great question. It actually shows that you're a really rational person and you're making a serious decision here, which is amazing. So what I did was, boom, we restated it. Boom, we made our association. And then I would ask, you can call it an attack. It sounds a little bit more aggressive than it is, but you basically attack the frame of the question. You say, hey, which certifications are you looking for specifically? And the thing is most people have never been asked a question about their question. They usually ask questions because they feel like they're supposed to make an informed decision. But most of the time, they don't even know what they're asking. And so they're like, I don't know. It's like, well, let me tell you what we do have. Now, if the person's like, do they have NASM and ACE certifications? Now, if I don't have that for my trainer specifically, I would then say, why those certifications specifically, right? And then they would say, well, I heard that they're good. It's like, well, those are amazing certifications. I agree with them. I'm not disagreeing. And then I would say, well, we have a couple other ones, and I'll tell you why we chose these rather than those. And now I can answer it without failing, right? Now, if I just said, our guys don't have that, or they have this, I might have lost the sale right there. And so the thing is that this applies to basically any question that someone asks. It could even be like, I need to think about it. It'd be like, awesome, what's your main concern? Right? Like immediately, I'm not letting them out on that. Or like, hey, what are the main variables you're using to make the decision? Or what would make this a no? Right? These are all questions. Or what are you most afraid of?
We did something similar last week. Yeah, of course, totally get that. Usually when I hear that though, it's one of two things, either, A or B. Is that fair for me to say? What he's done here is great, actually. Okay, great, awesome. What's your main concern? And if you can deliver it like that, yeah, awesome, great. What's your main concern? You can deliver it in quite a relaxed way. You can deliver it in a non-aggressive way, a non-intimidating or imposing way. Just like, oh, great, awesome, totally get it. What's your main concern? If you can get the tonality right on that, you're getting straight to the crux of it. That's really, really good. I really like that.
Having happen, right? If I'm deeper in the sale, obviously that wouldn't be my first one. I would say, what's your main concern? Then we'd sort the question from there. But many times people ask you questions in the sale that you don't need to answer. You just ask more questions about their question. And as long as you're the one asking questions, you're the one who's in control. Which leads me to rule number 1 of the AAA. So here's a little psychology for you. As counterintuitive as this seems, a prospect believes almost nothing about what you say and almost everything that they say. And so the goal is not to tell them they're a good fit. The goal is to ask them questions so that they then say, I think I'm a good fit for this. Or yeah, that makes sense. That's how you can get them, you breadcrumb them to the logical solution, which is that they should buy your thing. And by the way, if you like some of this more advanced sales stuff, we go through this stuff in depth at our acquisition.com scaling workshop. So my sales director, he personally meets with all the companies that show up and helps them deconstrain their sales, whether it's a scripting issue, whether it's nurture issues, whether it's compensation issues. It's stuff that we understand really well. And so if you are a business owner, you are looking to scale, check them out, acquisition.com, hit the scale button, and my team will be in touch. So a lot of beginner salespeople think that they should, and this is the worst question to ever ask in sales, is do you have any questions? It's literally asking them to have objections and asking them to take the wheel of the conversation. You're literally saying, here, take control over this because I don't know what I'm doing. So please don't do that. Train that out of your team. The second thing is that as soon
a lot of this is about control, keeping control. You ask a question back. The person who's asking questions is in control. And if you ask, hey, have you got any questions? You're now opening up a potential can of worms. Now, what can we say as a checkpoint instead of, do you have any questions? Based on what you told me at the start of this call, does that make sense so far? What are your thoughts on what I've shown you so far? Based on your current process, how does this compare? This is what we can be asking instead of asking, do you have any questions? Because like you said, that's a potentially dangerous path to go down. Always relay it back, but get them to be thinking when you're asking a question. Take them back to their own process, take them back to their initial problems, take them back to their initial pain points that they told you earlier in the call, and relay it back.
As you start answering questions, again, they're the judge, jury, and executioner of whether or not your answers are good. And if your salespeople are not as knowledgeable as you or your technicians, which is often true in any kind of service business, the people delivering are not necessarily the same or as knowledgeable as the people who are selling it, is that they basically set themselves up for failure. And I'll give you a quick overcome for this if someone gets a little bit like, hey, why aren't you answering my questions? You say, listen, it would be like you asking the secretary about how your heart surgery is going to be with the surgeon. You're going to want to talk to the surgeon. And I'll give you a different one. I call this the mechanic version, which is, hey, you're asking me what's wrong with your car, and it would be unethical for me to answer it without looking under the hood first. And so we can give you much better answers on the inside once we've started working with your business.
Andy Elliott would love that
whatever,
one.
Right, with your body. It doesn't really matter, right? But you can use that analogy to kind of get around it. And then I say this, and this seals it. And if anyone, this is how I say it, and if anyone does give you an answer on the first call without already having looked under the hood, after already giving you a physical or doing an assessment, run the other way, because it means they're just trying to tell you whatever they can to get you to buy. And
guys, we can use this in SaaS, right? If exactly as he said it, look, if anyone's getting you to or answers questions without actually having asked you any questions and done a proper discovery, run the other way. They're just trying to sell you their product. So again, this is translatable into the SaaS space.
now I have the ethical high ground, and they can't ask any more questions about that. Rule number 2, no one can disagree with a question. I tell my team, be like smoke. And so you can't catch smoke because all you're doing is you're basically always side shifting in terms of whatever they say. You're like, ooh, let me ask you a question about that. Ooh, can you be more specific? Hey, what are the variables you're thinking about? And that way, always engaging with them, and they're the ones doing the talking, and then you get to decide whether their answers are good or not, and whether or not they're a good fit for the program. Now, we're not going to tell them that they're a good fit for the program. We're going to have them make that decision. But in terms of judge, jury, executioner, you want that to be you. Here's why rule number 2 is so important. You can never disagree with a prospect. Now, you may, actually disagree with them, but you don't want to voice disagreement to the prospect, because you never win a sale by winning an argument. Anyone who's engaged in an argument, both people lose. And more importantly for you as a salesperson, you lose the sale. And so the objective is actually to never disagree with a prospect. And the point is to get them to change their minds. And we can only do that in an agreeable way. People don't change their minds when in a bad mood or they feel insulted, right? And so we do that by asking them questions. Now, there are ways to ask questions that seem insulting, and that's what AAA helps solve. And we're going to dive more on that as we go through this. But it also means that we can ask questions about their questions, which is something that a lot of beginner salespeople don't know. They then assume they know what this person is asking about. And so they have this really vague question, and then they try and come up with the quote right answer, and they fail every time. And by the way, this is just the ultra mega hack, is that if you don't know how to answer the question, you can always ask more questions about their question. So let me show you how this sounds in reality. So someone says, I need to think about it. We say, totally understand. What are the main things you're considering? What are the variables that you're considering in your decision? What's your main concern? What are you most afraid of having happen? What would make this a no? And one of my favorite questions, by the way, is, well, then what would it take for you to say yes? Now, let's say someone says,
many different ways to skin a cat, right? About let me think about it, as we said earlier. Absolutely fine. Totally get that. Typically, when I hear that, it's usually one of two things. Either I haven't done my job properly, and in which case I apologize, I haven't been very clear, or there's something that we've covered today that is a bit of a concern to you. Would that be fair to say? And then you can go down the path that way. But his one is great.
I don't have time. Timing is off right now for me. You say, great, totally understand, acknowledge. Timing is kind of tough for you right now. I think it's smart that you're already thinking about implementation. Our biggest success stories are actually people who think through the process the same way you are right now. So what would make it a good time? And so as you work through these two give you the space, make the positive association. They take a step back You say, I feel you, I totally understand. Now they're back to neutral. And then you associate with the thing that's closer to the sale, and then you move the conversation forward with the ask. So let's do another one.
Love that. Timing. What is that? When a prospect says, oh, it's not quite the right time, it's a bit about timing. It's fluff, right? And you need to get to the crux of what that means. Too often I'm hearing sales reps talking about, or they're speaking to prospects and prospects go, it's just not the right time. No, that's more of a timing thing. For absolutely fine. No worries. I'll give you a call back next quarter. You need to stop doing that and address it. I hear you, I think, but just to be clear, when you say timing, are you saying timing as in you've got other pressing priorities, that's why we need to push this into Q1? Or by timing, do you mean actually there may never be a good time for this product because it's just not the right fit? And then get an answer to which one it is. Because it could be the right product fit, but it actually genuinely is a timing thing. And timing means, okay, so I'm guessing you've got other priorities by that. Okay, cool. Do you mind me asking, what are those priorities before we need to address this? And then you can dig in and actually figure out maybe your product should be bumped up the priority order. Because again, you're guiding your prospect here. They might not understand why the product is a more pressing priority than what they think is already a priority for them. Or it gives them the option to say, actually, I just don't know if this product's ever going to be a good fit, in which case you go, okay, cool. A bit confused. Do you mind walking me through that and understanding what that is? So timing, guys, when prospects say timing thing, great. Just so I'm clear, what do you mean by timing? Is it a case of later on in the year, or is it a case of actually this is never going to be a fit because it just doesn't seem the right product to you? Make sure you dig down to the bottom of it. Guys, if you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a like and subscribe so I can understand exactly what type of content you guys are after and I can deliver more of it for you.